Hey there viewers, my name's Torinski and welcome back after a bit of a hiatus to DCSS Sunday, where we are still in our journey to try and get our win with Halfling here. It seems kind of fitting that this weekend would be the release of the next version, 0.27 of the game, in which Halflings were cut out. Maybe, just maybe, that means that today will be the day that we finally push our way through this little bit of a speed bump in our journey so far. Of course though, that's not to say that we weren't enjoying our time in the Fling lineage here, trying to show and prove once and for all that slings are good enough for anyone, until we kind of gave up at the end here with waffling, I guess. But that aside, we were doing alright in our final run here that we left off on a couple weeks ago. Waff started out as a fighter, but definitely has been able to find a few of the things that were missing in our previous runs. We even got a quick blade before Lair, which is something special in its own right. So I'm hoping that something special about this Fling offspring in particular, and I think that Waff will go the distance. So without further ado, let's at least hop into the game here and take a look at where we left off, when we were last here, that is. I should also say that I wanted to start this session off today with a little bit of a shout out, because there were a couple of Reddit users, namely, I believe it was I Am Jack and Smeg Soup, who I am hugely grateful for giving me a shout out on the DCSS subreddit. Somewhere where I didn't want to self-advertise and I didn't really feel comfortable not being a part of the community, calling out myself there. So that was extremely kind of them to put my name out there, and I'm very grateful for it. So I'd like to thank both of you if you're watching this, and if not, then I hope you're doing great anyway. But hopping back into our game here, let's take a look at where we left off. We had made it through most of Lair, hadn't quite dipped into any of our S branches yet. I do remember reaching a little bit of trouble in Orc. I believe there was a warlord that gave us some trouble back in the last session here. But that was before we'd upgraded our AC a bit, also gotten the Quick Blade fully online here and upgraded a few times with enchantment scrolls. And speaking of enchantment scrolls, that is something that was a bit of an issue of contention last time. I was going on and on about how I have such a strong tendency to save up the enchant armor scrolls and the enchant weapon scrolls. Usually I think in some vain desire to really want to access any treasure trove that I ever come across in this game. But I was probably being a little bit too proud in that regard, because at this stage, we would really like Waff to survive their journey through the dungeon here. So with a couple weeks of introspection to think about it and, you know, settle the issue a little bit on my side of things, I was going to say I came to a decision, but as always, I'm indecisive as all get out. So I still find myself questioning everything that I was thinking just earlier today. But that is to say that I'm feeling we're going to spend some of these and just try our very best to get this buddy through the dungeon in one piece. Like I said, it would be nice to win this weekend of all weekends, including the fact that if we get through Halfling, I'm very much debating switching up to the new version now that it's officially released, just to kind of keep current and keep some, you know, more contemporary crawl content getting out there, since I know there aren't that many people who stream the game online these days. So, I believe in you, Waff. We can do this together. But in that, or in the spirit of that, as it were, let's start reading some of these. Because we have our chainmailed upgrade, probably not great. I'd like to have some kind of ego on it. I guess positive energy isn't fantastic either, considering the fact that we've been doing just fine in regards to that resistance, largely due to this one amazing artifact ring that's giving us the double pips, and along with some of the other very necessary base resistances here. So we're going to start today off with maybe a little bit of a search through our dungeon, see what we might have left behind in our journey. So let's start with armor, very general search through the dungeon here, and see what we land on. If we want to throw stealth out the window completely, which is tempting, even with a quick blade at our side, could switch over to this ruined plate armor. I guess at the very least we could check out what kind of enchantment that buddy has on it. And indeed, let's do so. As long as it's somewhere where we can reach without putting ourselves in danger, that should be just dandy. So let's try this out. Holy cow. -2 cursed plate mail. Not fantastic. Let's just get rid of that right away, shall we? Drop that bad boy back on the ground. Feeling our absolutely ripped halfling buddy here. But shows how good all my thought, or all the thought that I put into this does me here, because once we're actually in game, there are always a few little factors that we have to take into account. So despite spending the last few minutes going over this and ranting about it, I think I might actually have to hold off for just a wee bit longer. Maybe look for a decent ecoed piece of armor to try and enchant up in the future. Though that is to say, still in the meantime, we could upgrade some of these other bits and pieces. Even our cloak that's not doing anything for us. Could put a couple of upgrade scrolls into it. It can only go up to a maximum enchantment of +2 anyway, so why not? Let's give ourselves a couple more pips of AC, bring all of our defensive stats into the 20 or above range, which is definitely pretty solid for this type of character, especially considering the last few halflings we've had and the kind of state of their defensive capabilities. We've been largely focusing on evasion, and now it's nice to have a bit of a more generalized mix of the two, evasion and AC, with some good shielding to boot, of course. On the other side of things, let's check over our skills here and see where we left off. Fighting, we started training pretty late in our journey, so we definitely want to keep that on, keep our max HP going up a bit. Shields is on its way up to the point where it's the necessary skill to use our kite shield with no penalties. So we could keep training that up slowly but surely in the background. The other thing that I was kind of mulling over in my head and tossing back and forth amongst myself was throwing some experience into slings. We finally did pick up a sling, a hunting sling last time around, and we have a whole lot of ammunition that we've saved up over the beginning of our journey here. So that definitely might be a decent place to toss at least a little bit of experience here and try and utilize that sling for a bit of extra damage as enemies close into us. So in a similar vein to the armor, I should do a quick search of sling, make sure I'm not leaving anything amazing on the ground here or forgotten behind. Looks like all just base level hunting slings each and everywhere, so no concerns in that regard. And let's set this bad boy. We'll use the equal sign to adjust the letter to B, and that should allow us to do some quick switching between our two types of weapon here. And that should pretty much set us up for the start of today. And let's see how our journey begins. We have a few options here, including going back down to Orc, maybe figuring out if we can get through the issues that we had last time now with a little bit more experience under our belts, a little bit more defensive capability as well. Hopefully will do us well against all of the orcs that we find down there. Or we could dip into our S branches. We have the resistances necessary for them for sure. Shoals can obviously be a little bit scary sometimes, but it's definitely just about time for us to at least peek our heads in to each of those sections of the game. Maybe on one final search, we'll look up scroll, because there was one solid scroll shop in Orc 1. You know what, I think that makes my decision for me. I'm gonna head down that way, seeing if we run into any stragglers that we left behind. Doesn't seem like it. Let's pop into the shop here. I'm gonna buy up all the ID scrolls that we've left behind, as well as maybe mark the rest of these as things that we might want to buy in the future here, even the near future, depending on what kind of stuff we run into. But we can now immediately use these ID scrolls, check out a couple of our unidentified scrolls here, really crossing our fingers and hoping for a brand weapon, because I'd love to put a nice brand on this quick blade. Not quite. Scroll of Summoning though, definitely not too bad. That will very potentially save our lives in the future here. And so, let us, oops, not with a find, but a Control G for go, let us decide where we're heading. Maybe while we're here, let's dip our toes down to Orc 2, see what we may be facing in our future here. Let's take a quick peek around. The other fortunate part about switching over to our sling here is it does allow us to draw enemies to us a little bit more than usual. So much of the time here, I'm just pressing tab over and over again and find myself walking towards them, but it's nice to just toss a few rocks this way and that way, make them come to us, you know? I say as we start crawling towards an enemy there, whoops. But I can already see that the switch over to actually using our slings instead of just talking about using slings, going all right for us. As we definitely soften up all these enemies from a distance here, which is always a nice thing to do for sure. But onwards we go, finding another scroll shop right away, which could be amazing. And in fact, I'm very happy with what I see here. I think I'm gonna pick up another Scroll of Identify. Scrolls of Fear are nice and cheap, as well as being potential lifesavers in the future. And then obviously, a Scroll of Blinking is pretty much a snap grab for me at this point. It's nice to have those in the back pocket to save our lives in the future, especially since we need to do Riffling proud. I believe it was Riffling that died with something ridiculous like 6 Scrolls of Blinking in their inventory, just because I was trying to be clever rather than smart. So let's do our ancestor justice and try and use those blink scrolls appropriately, shall we? And hello, Safid, definitely waffling, still doing us proud here. We did just start for the day here, but I have a pretty good feeling about this buddy. We're definitely in a pretty solid place, even just to start out here, which you'd love to see. And okie dokie, don't mind taking some quick pot shots at these orcs here. A little bit worse now with the wizard in line, but oops, let's make sure I'm firing on the diagonal so I'm not losing any rocks to the lava. But that is just to say that we're still getting some free hits on a lot of these orcs here. Now we've been distracted by the buddy to the lower left there, but that should be all good. And let's just keep firing off, shall we? Firing even into the smoke here, where it suits us. And there we go. Now we're starting to draw them out. They've gone smarter, actually figured out what we were doing here. So let's take all these buddies on a merry jaunt downwards, somewhere a little bit safer, where we can retreat at a moment's notice in case these orc knights start to overwhelm us. We know from our own experiences from being the messiah of the orcs that as soon as you have 2 orc knights in conjunction with each other, it's where things get a bit tricky or a bit powerful in terms of the orcs themselves, because the knights can buff each other with this might effect, which 1.5 times damage on an already powerful enemy can definitely hit pretty hard. But as we can see there, everything either missed or was deflected enough not to deal any damage. So I'll take the victory where it lies there. And hopefully we can get some more of that same luck. You know, oof. The Orc Sorcerer bringing in some demon spawns is a wee bit of a pain in the butt. Especially, I don't want to step to the right here going downwards, because that will cause the Orc Knight to step on this dispersal trap. And who knows where that will put us. So let's instead bring all of our new friends down on this way, heading towards the stairs, and then I'm even going to try and pull this one Orc Knight up with us. Little bit sketchy for sure. Let's do a quick check of how much damage we're dealing with here. 25 plus the Great Mace, as well as 17 plus the Giant Spike Club. So, slightly dangerous amount, but we can take some steps away from our new friends here, try and gain some distance. Ideally, if we can get them down to at least just fighting us one at a time, that's perfect. Let's see, wand-wise, how are we doing? Decent number of Wand of Acid charges, so let's maybe try and amplify our ability to get through this fight here with that bad boy. Another XV on our Orc Knight just to double check. 25 plus extra. Shouldn't be able to lethal us. Now, definitely, potentially able to lethal us. So, let's start our running away here. Halfling has had their fair share of pillar dancing adventures, most namely with, I believe, a Hydra, a 7-headed Hydra. We spent the large part of our last session here a couple weeks ago just circling around a pillar, trying to heal up just enough to be able to take one more hit from that buddy. But as soon as we get to a decent point here, we can start thinking of some alternative options. One thing that we do have that we haven't taken advantage of yet are throwing nets. Could be a decent way to just incapacitate this Orc Knight for a wee bit here. Get us some extra damage down, and in fact, instead of pillar dancing, we could have tried to use our one space there to run away and heal up fully, but no matter to that anymore because we unfortunately lost that due to random energy. So let's just put ourselves in a good spot, switch over to our throwing nets here, try and hit 66% chance, not too bad. And then because we have a short blade, we're dealing extra damage to the incapacitated buddy, and I will definitely take any advantage we can against the stronger orcs. Here we go. Slowly but surely we can whittle down these buddies. I'm still very much debating leaving the area completely here, if just because our total health isn't incredible at this stage. And one thing we do have to be wary of in regards to that is Orc Priests, because they will deal a decent chunk of damage with each and every smite that they bring down on our heads. And you'll see there that an Orc Sorcerer popped out of the woodwork, so I'm just gonna hightail the heck out of there and try and take on this buddy ourselves one-on-one once more. The Quick Blade is a pretty incredible weapon, especially for this stage of the game, but we do have to keep in mind that it's not going to do amazing against the more heavily armored enemies that we might run into in our journeys. Definitely something to just always keep in the back of our heads at the very least. But as long as, again, just one-on-one here, our defenses looking much stronger than they are in the average Halfling game, should be able to take these buddies out with a little bit more safety, I guess, as it were. Here we go. Sorcerer once again coming on to us at a much better time, at least. We only have a couple of regular orcs to deal with. Hellwing isn't fantastic, but nothing we can't handle. Trying to think of the best way to deal some quick damage to the Orc Sorcerer here. Could try and switch over to our slings, use some sling bullets. But maybe instead we'll just fight for a little bit here, see how it goes, and once again I'm ready to just hightail it up these stairs at any given moment, especially as the summons start to add up. Let's just get out of there. They can't follow us upstairs, and we can just wait out a few turns up here, make sure that those despawn before we head back down and try and fight this buddy one-on-one, and it should go a lot better. We're able to attack 2 to 3 times per turn, depending on how it all lines up timing-wise. So that's a pretty huge advantage. And once we get those casters into close range, which can be a bit of a challenge on its own, as we saw, if they keep summoning in a bunch of little critters, might just be a pain in the rear. But here we go, definitely making decent ground into Orc to start out our day today. It's funny because we have Gozeg for this run, which means that we should be seeing a decent amount of money, all in all, throughout the course of the run. And in order to take advantage of that, we could use Gozeg's Call Shop ability, but we even were lucky enough this time around to get both of the humanoid S branches, which in terms of gameplay means that we are able to get more shops potentially. It's not guaranteed by any means, but each of those S branches, Shoals and Stake, do have a chance of having shops show up. So I'm hoping we can really take advantage of Mr. Moneybags Gozag here, and maybe just maybe find some game changers throughout the course of our journey here. So we'll do our best to just continue drawing as few of these enemies towards us at once as we can. Again, being very cautious, specifically of any priests that we see along the way. Even wizards and sorcerers start to get a little bit sketchy. We don't quite have the elemental resistances that I would like for going up against them. But we should be able to make it work, all things considered here. And another sorcerer on their way. I mean, if the sorcerers want to keep using the negative energy bolts, I'll take it. That works out just great for me. Here we go. I'm gonna this time make sure to use the period key because I don't want my sling bullets firing down into the lava. Right. Paralyze is something that I should be a little more cognizant of. Let's check the percentages on that. It's probably like over 50% chance of working. Ah, not quite right, but pretty close, 46%. Which is not great for us. We definitely like, if possible, to increase our willpower here. Though of course that's often more up to the game than it is up to us. There we go. So I'm glad that I was already being cautious of the sorcerers, now that I know that we should be even more cautious than I was giving credit. I want to make sure, get them into close range. Oof. Paralyzed does some nasty work to us right now. Again, we're getting quite a few attacks in per turn, able to take out yet another sorcerer here. And let's do a quick check-in with our skill. Slings is really ramping up here quite quickly, which you love to see. Those +4 aptitudes are no joke in the game. Definitely doesn't exactly require much commitment to get this at least off the ground. Slings, that is. Let's even take a look. Max, or the min delay is reached at level 12. So I might even set that as a target. So we have some level of cognizance for where our skills are at. I all too often find myself just letting those train off the rails. When did we get the quick blade? Nice find. Now we just need to brand it. Very nice find. Yeah, I believe we got it. It was mere minutes after we first found our way into Lair. We got it through a scroll of acquirement, which was exceptionally lucky to find that early in the game. But unfortunately, the brand scrolls are being a little bit stingier, which isn't all too surprising, of course, but I'm very excited for when we finally get our hands on one of those. I mean, ideally a couple, because the best thing to do with a quick blade is to have a few chances to try and get it up to the electric brand, something that will deal a certain base amount of damage, since we attack so quickly that really begins to add up. But I'll take whatever the game gives me at this point, if we can just put some kind of brand on it, for sure. There we go. I don't know where the sorcerer that we left behind ended up here, which worries me the slightest bit. There, that might be them. Want to be careful not to get surrounded whatsoever, thanks to those paralyzed chances. So let's just keep drawing the attention of little groups of buddies at the time here. Take advantage of the fact that we're not super sneaky, but with our sling here, we are able to draw enemies towards us. Also, maybe important to note is that we're occasionally able to leave some gold piles behind on the ground, which helps out a huge deal because Gozag's distraction ability is absolutely incredible, especially for dealing with some of these spellcasters that would otherwise be a wee bit frightening. And here we go. Now this is a shop. Holy cow. so many Wand of Acid charges, which I'm always happy to replenish. Those will do us wonders, especially in the late game, going up against higher AC enemies. So those are a big one, as well as the other evocables here. We have a decent amount of training in evocations, so something like the File Floods, Phantom Mirror, pretty amazing. In fact, all of these. Yeah, how's your Evo? Rod, File, Mirrors, right? Everything we could possibly want here. I believe our Evo's up to 12 as well, so definitely a decent investment in our future. File Floods I'm very tempted to grab right off the bat here because that does act as a bit of a deterrent against enemy spellcasters that we're so concerned about right at this moment. Can use that to prevent some spellcasting shenanigans from taking place. And then I should maybe buy a Phantom Mirror as well. We don't have insane amounts of disposable income right now, but a Phantom Mirror will do some pretty incredible wonders, potentially, especially if we run into any really scary uniques. Might be a game changer and a lifesaver. So, I am going to snap grab these. We can always save up more money for the future if we find anything else that calls out to us. But we should have also ran over here because I didn't even realize there was another gadget shop, and this one just full of condenser veins. Which, unfortunately, for our bank here, is something that I'm just going to snap grab as well. I want to be a little bit cautious here, just because we no longer have the ability to potion petition, which is usually a bit of a mainstay with Gozeg for keeping myself alive. But that condenser vein will do incredible work in large crowds of enemies, which is always a risk that we find ourselves with in Orc here. I'm also going to finally clear out our inventory of some of the stuff we've been carrying around. Swamp Dragon Scales no longer necessary now that we have a more realistically usable source of resist poison in our ring. There we go. Oof, double Orc Sorcerers. Fun stuff. I'd like to draw you buddies to me, preferably without being in view too often. We can keep out of sight range while still bringing them this way and prevent too many summons from clogging up the map here. And then once we're here, I feel a wee bit safer to just fire off a few shots. We won't use a Foul Flood against a single sorcerer in this stage, I think. I feel comfortable enough with that process to kind of do our usual routine here. Oops. Ooh, an Ogre Magi as well. This is another monster that has some painful abilities. At least, or at the very least, we do have our Elec and our poison on at all times, but this book 3 here, Crystal Sphere, is an absolute nightmare. So let's try our best to stay out of range here for the start. That blink could have gone worse if it had brought them closer to us rather than further away. But there we go. Let's maybe wait a few turns here. Oh, did they not see where we went? Essentially, I was trying to draw that buddy out so that we could potentially throw a bunch of evocations their way. Maybe simplify the fight just a wee bit. In fact, let's do that with the sorcerer here. Playing it very cautiously to start out here, but we don't want to underestimate any of these spellcasters. Done so before to my own peril, for sure. But not too shabby. Just drawing them out one-on-one here. Oops. Let's not get cocky. Just because it's worked so well so far doesn't mean we can afford to take extra risks whatsoever. There we go. Bring this buddy towards us and switch over to the quick blade for a fast finish. Here we go. Another chance to try out a few different strategies with the Ogre Mage. Ooh, another blink from them. Let's see here. What kind of wands will really make the distance? I was hoping that we would have a wand of paralysis, so that would potentially simplify this even further. As is, we might just have to take our chances with some straight up fighting here. Want to be cognizant and careful again of that Lahudib's Crystal Sphere. That's an absolutely brutal ability to go up against when you're anywhere even close to having just 100 max HP here. Oh my gosh, apparently this Ogre Mage is obsessed with blinking and it's all they want to do. Which, I mean, I'm not complaining, don't get me wrong. I'd love it if that's the only spell in their book that they use here. Especially considering the fact that that Bolt of Cold confirms that we're dealing with a Book 3 Ogre Mage here. Those Crystal Spheres are a possibility. On top of the fact that we don't actually have any elemental resistances either. But hey, if they're gonna miss with each and every bolt that they throw at us, I'll take my lucky stars there. Thank them kindly. And keep it moving here. I'm hoping that's the worst we have to go up against. Doesn't quite look it. Elroka here does have a decent number of painful abilities. That banishment in particular, something we do not want to mess with whatsoever. So in fact, I think I'm good. I'm gonna take a break. We've delved a decent way through the start of our Orc 2 here, and I'm happy with our progress so far. So let's take ourselves out of here potentially. Maybe dipping into the rest of the floor here where I'm not quite so scared. Elroka is awake, but has quite a distance to randomly move in order to actually find us where we stand. So I'm hoping that we can quickly finish off the rest of the floor here without too much concern. Another paralysis would be a nightmare here, but as shown in the first round there, not something that we can't handle, at the very least. There we go. So many Orc Sorcerers, an entire floor just absolutely full of them. And I definitely agree with your take there, Sapid. Always better lucky than good. Otherwise, how would I ever get through any of these games? Let us bring one of these Orc Knights up with us in the classic move that we use to finish these buddies off. The 1v1 that we so desire. Which, as you can see, takes a whole lot of turns. It's funny because we have a low base damage weapon, which has trouble with armored folks. But on top of that, the fights seem like they go on for so much longer than they do even, just due to the fact that we're attacking the twice or three times per turn. You can really just hold down tab a lot of the times and just roll through the turns really fast. But as we can see, even a couple of hits from those knights do a bit of a number on us. Now, in order to not mess up with my auto explorer, I'm going to drop a quick exclusion onto that hallway there, make sure that we don't accidentally head down that way. Let us take on the rest of these buddies. Even though we don't quite feel comfortable taking on the main fortress of Orc 2, it's definitely nice to still try and get all of these little bits of experience before we move on to those S branches. Every tiny bit should help us out in the long run, and holy cow, that's a lot of shops for our Orc. I'm very happy to see all this. Hey Failfink and hey Enon, how are the two of you doing? Hope it's been a fantastic week here for you both. And, if we ever want to switch into casting spells, this is quite a nice artifact ring here, and in fact, it does have some willpower on it, which is exactly what I've just been bemoaning and complaining about for the entire start of our session. Our poison and will be still my heart. Indeed. Got a little too excited on seeing that myself even. We don't need the our poison because we do already have the resistance ring of the gods on us here, but it's definitely a huge thing to keep an eye on, even if just to get ourselves some willpower in the future if we're still desperate for that. I'm also going to mark off the See Invisible ring there because that is another thing that we have been lacking in quite a few of our games up to this point, so I'll take it. And, ooh, another scroll shop with another scroll of blinking. Don't mind if I do, game. Thank you very much for that. Actually, another kind of random thing of note here that's pretty ridiculous is we've gone to this stage in the game, and if I do a quick backslash dash, we can see unrecognized items here. At this stage in the game, we still have not identified our heal wounds potions whatsoever. We could have one on us, but we only have single stack potions of 2 identified types, which is pretty absurd. I don't think I've ever gone to this stage in the game without finding at least like 3, 4 heal wounds potions. Normally that would be a death sentence for me, as I definitely have a bad tendency to over-rely on those to get me out of troublesome situations, but hey, seemed to work out for us so far, if not just because we have our main man Gozag to keep us in one piece. But okie dokie, an artifact helmet. I'm definitely happy to find. We're just wearing a +2 right now, so let's cross the fingers here and see what we get. Okay, so this went from being in a tricky situation this whole run to an absolute godsend, as we get good here. Quite good if you ask me, with double pips of RF, double pips of willpower, and see invisible. Holy crap. I'm never switching off that helmet, most likely. I guess never say never and all that. We don't, only Sith deals in absolutes, but that's pretty huge. Oh no. As I immediately run into an alarm trap. Not fantastic. Don't have any cancellation potions yet, so I think we're going to have to just do a bit of a cautious walk backwards. I'm going to use the click moves so that it for sure stops me on seeing any enemies that I don't notice myself. And let's just head up. I guess we're still safe. Ooh. Okay, sure, that has nice, but how does it look? Fashion souls above all? That's the thing. Don't even have to worry about it in that department. The gold completely matches the trimming on our armor. You love to see it. No sacrifices must be made today in order to do ourselves some good. Also, that's super sad. I'm so sorry you have to see your ancestor, Wolf. Should we put them out of their misery? Maybe not quite yet. That evasion is pretty high and they do have a decent number of hit points. There is a box of beasts back there though. That's not too bad. So I normally stay far away from ghost vaults, but this might be the exception today. Not only will we put our ancestor's soul to rest, but we will also get a half-decent evocable item out of the whole dealio here. Let's maybe take one more look at this. Very much debating even taking this fight now. Could use something like our Phantom Mirror even to add a little bit of extra protection on top of us. I don't believe that Tri had an amazing weapon at their disposal. 17 damage plus its weapon of protection. I feel like I could take you. Potentially firing double shots. Actually, that's an interesting. I don't know how much the god abilities stay with our deceased friends here. And again, I normally stay far, far away from these vaults, but I think we can do an alright job of this whole thing. So let's take on Tri, put their soul to rest once and for all here. And in fact, it's going pretty well so far. I mean, as long as they keep using that sling, we're reflecting half their shots back at them anyway. I'll take that. Again, just taking in this absurd number of turns here as we quickly stab multiple times per turn at rapid speeds. Fight goes on for a while, especially with their evasion put on top of that, but there we go. R.I.P. Tri. Love you forever. And let's get ourselves a box of beasts, shall we? Not too shabby, indeed. Holy cow. I'm slowly but sure, I was going to say slowly but surely actually, but that's not even accurate. I'm quickly, with surprising speed here, losing any and all excuses I would have to not get through this run in one piece. It's frightening in many ways, but also kind of a relief, obviously, in many others. And plus, with the extra willpower that we have just picked up thanks to our helmet here, I'm already confident to head back into the mix of things here. El Roca ain't got nothing on me. And, how careful do I want to play this? Not that careful. 0% chance to banish, 0% chance to paralyze. Absolute just chef's kiss there. You love to see it. Let's switch over maybe to our sling. We can even get a couple of pot shots in against the lady here. She does have the Bolt of Cold spellbook, which isn't fantastic for us. It's one of the few things that we're still not resistant to. But there we go. No problems whatsoever with the main willpower issues out of the way. Even Orc Sorcerers, absolute breeze. No problems to us anymore. Though I should be careful not to get too cocky here. Hubris is the downfall of all halflings, as we learned the hard way through Rift. So let's avoid that, shall we? Here we go. Just about through the last of Orc here, and again, just so many shops available to us. You'd love to see it. Heavily runed plate armor. Jeez, I can't afford all the good stuff the game is throwing at me. It's not often that that's my issue. Jeez Louise. Well, got our work cut out for us in terms of saving up some gold here, but definitely will be returning to Orc 2 here, if just to take advantage of all that ridiculousness. And here we go. Where to next? Could go back out to the main dungeon. We have Seen Visible now, so we don't have to worry too much about unseen horrors, vampires, some other things that we might find out there in the regular dungeon floors. And in fact, I may have even just convinced myself of doing just that.